An iconic sign on a building in the upstate is coming down today. Crews using a crane are bringing down the historic Tillman House sign from this building just off of Highway 93 on campus. Trustees approved a plan about a year ago to demolish the building, which opened in 1950 as a hotel. The board says Tillman House was just too old and costly to be renovated.
I was invited to make speeches in a great many of the counties of the state to which I'd never been. And as opportunity offered, I accepted these and made addresses, thus extending my acquaintances and knowledge of the conditions throughout the state and increasing the number of supporters of the farmers' college idea. Among those who had been reading these papers and thus became familiar with the subject was Mr. Thomas G. Clemson, who was then living the life of a recluse at Fort Hill, Calhoun's old home. As I afterwards learned, upon visiting Mr. Clemson at his request, he had long had in mind the necessity for the state to do something in the interest of industrial and scientific education, and on the occasion of that visit, I went to Pendleton in the fall of 1886 and was met by Mr. Clemson in his carriage and carried to his historic home, Fort Hill. I wish I had had the faculty of describing the appearance of things at the old house of John C. Calhoun as it then appeared and contrasting it with what appears at Clemson College today. Mr. Clemson talked over his scheme with me and mentioned his desire to establish a technical and industrial school such as I had been advocating, and gave that as an explanation as to why he invited me to visit him. His ideas were not as clear or well defined as to which course he would pursue, but the thought of a great agricultural and technical institution grew on him. Such was my conviction of the strength of the agricultural college idea that I felt willing to guarantee the state of South Carolina would accept the property and begin the work of building a college in his lifetime should he make the donation at once. And I recall begging him to have his last years brightened and made happy by watching the consummation of his cherished plan. But he was the most suspicious man in regards to lawyers and to the dangers of getting involved in lawsuits as I'd ever met. And nothing we could say made any impression on him to take immediate action. But he did accept our suggestion in regard to what disposition he should make of his property at his death, and we talked the whole matter over, Colonel Simpson making memoranda as he was requested to write the will and bring it to Mr. Clemson at his earliest convenience. The fear that a board wholly controlled by political influence might warp and twist the college from its purpose and finally cause it to drift back to the ordinary literary type. Having in view the possible danger of the Negroes, who are so largely in the majority in our state, at some time getting control of the state government, we suggested the scheme of 7 trustees who would be self-perpetuating and thus make it impossible for an adverse legislature to shipwreck the college or make it a school to which Negroes would be admitted. We were anxious to keep down the danger of Negro domination of the school and at the same time prevent the prostitution of the institution to the ends not intended by its founder. Benjamin Ryan Tillman.
This is Tillman House, where he who knew better took up the whip. We build monuments to who we want our heroes to be, not who they actually were. Negroes, I think, will be the resort that I shall be compelled to. They are hazardous and give much trouble and require constant watching. My object is to get the most I can of the property. I care but little to whom and how they are sold, whether together or separated. The affair should be kept as secret as possible, on account of the Negroes. Thomas Clemson. He's here, this ghost. Reach out. He's as tangible as they come. As a child, he played in these peach orchards. Bit into a ripe one, like this one, and let its juices run down his chin. The old house sits right here, resting just inside these trees. He lay down in this grass. Let the warm spring sun color his cheeks. His beloved Chester Plantation, Trenton, South Carolina, the home of Benjamin Ryan Tillman. I can't talk about this place without also talking about this place. There is no memorial to the massacre that happened just below this road. Only a monument to a design we are reluctant to change. July 6th, 1876. Hamburg, South Carolina. Benjamin Tillman walked clockwise around the perimeter. What is white militia called the death circle. A circle of more than 100 white men with guns trained on 20 newly surrendered black men, soldiers of the National Guard. Some weeks before, these black men of Hamburg had armed themselves and organized so as to protect their right to vote. The white men, many of them known as red shirts, among whom Tillman was a leader, marched into Hamburg to make sure the black men didn't vote. Tillman, revolver in hand, walked clockwise, always clockwise around the death circle. He walked and thought, his good eye catching intermittent glances, and the vanquished as framed between the silhouettes of the armed white men. Tillman was thinking just then how he didn't want the scales of justice to even, not an eye for an eye. He wanted them to come crashing down. One white man had died in the fighting, as did one black man. But justice, Tillman thought, is a very heavy thing. Nor is there a memorial to those slaughtered in this place. Instead, these memorials honor the town of Ellington, which was located at the heart of what is now the Savannah River site. It was here in Ellington in September of 1876, in a grassy strip near the train tracks, that African-American state legislator, Simon Coker, was executed. He had come to Ellington to investigate the recent riots, where some 30 African-Americans had been murdered. A white mob pulled him off a train and brought him here. And he's still here, praying on his hands and knees, begging the executioner's leader, Ben Tillman, to deliver the corn crib key in his pocket to his soon-to-be widow. Watch as the bullet discharges into the back of Coker's head. We can tear down buildings, build new ones, but this won't change the design. In the Savannah River Basin, we have literally washed these histories away. The town of Hamburg, built on a floodplain, was abandoned. The town of Ellington, where Tillman and his gang murdered Simon Coker, was annexed in the 1950s to make room for the Savannah River site. It was under Thurman's tenure as governor that both the Savannah River site and Lake Hartwell were built. Seneca, the Cherokee town, located just below Calhoun and Clemson's beloved Fort Hill, and what is now the bottom of Lake Hartwell, was also washed away.